Welcome back, y'all, to the Don't Get It Twisted podcast. I'm here, Fine Panama. We got Mom Belo in the building, and we got a special guest today, Miss Evin herself.
What's up? What's up?
What's up?
Hello.
How is everybody doing today?
Good.
I'm feeling good. Yeah.
It's hot. It's hot. I don't know if you're in Georgia, but it's hot down here right now.
She was just in Georgia, and the weather was crazy when she was here.
I got stormed on. I was walking slow. I was in all types of heat and wetness, and I loved it and didn't like it at some point.
Right.
I'm back in the Bay, and I'm in SF where the wind is mighty, so I'm cold. I got a heater next to me.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's a decent day, but the wind it'll get you.
Right.
For sure.
So if you can introduce yourself for us, give us a little brief description about you and all that.
Yeah, when you had first asked before, I joked around and was like, I'm a lover, but I do think that that's how I kind of want to go about introducing myself moving forward, is moving away from all of these academic and professional titles. And first off, I'm a lover. Everything I do is love-based, or at least try to be. I'm an educator. I work in child development. I work with people. I work in communities. I do a lot of healing work. I stopped identifying as a healer. I say healing facilitator. I do a lot of facilitation. And I like to have fun and get down and dance and have a good time. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Awesome. So today our topic is called Understanding Communities. And I thought this was big for us to talk about because a big community is the LGBTQ community, which I have very little knowledge about, but I'm happy to have someone so close to me that I could ask questions and get, my knowledge, more knowledge from, because a lot of people speak on the LGBTQ community without having any knowledge, and it just makes you ignorant. So I got some questions that we're going to be asking you today.
Yeah. So, and I also, just first, if I can name, I think it's really important, and we can get into these titles and labels also. Right. But I want to name that I am speaking as a person, a part of the queer community versus speaking for the queer community.
Correct.
Right. And also naming that we can get into this if we need to or want to. I'm a cisgendered woman speaking, which means that I identify with the gender that I was born with. And I think that in getting into this conversation about queer and trans and non-binary folks, if we, move into that, knowing that I can't necessarily speak for them, but I could speak in my experience with folks, but I will never be speaking for something that I am not.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
But can always do my best to point you in the direction of people that can speak on it, right? Exactly.
Right.
Okay, so just to get started, is there a respectful way that you want us to address you, or you ask how to be addressed? We don't want to offend anybody. Evin.
Yeah.
Great.
Evin. In one of my jobs, you can sister Evin, but I'm Evin. I'm your sis. Right. I'm your friend. I'm here,
So just touching a little bit on that, what is that? I don't know exactly even how to ask the question, but I don't know if it's pronouns or just these different things. What is that? What is that about? Can you break that down for me?
So it's gender versus sexuality, which is, I think, sometimes where people can get confused about it. And it's understanding that there is a difference between sexuality and who you may be, and then also that how you're attracted to people, that we can get into all the different layers, right? There's physical attraction, there's emotional attraction, there's just mental attraction, and there's different words for it. Maybe you'll see somebody that says sapiosexual in their pronoun, and that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with gender or sexuality, but it's I am sexually attracted to people through the way we talk, right? And then that can then go more into sexuality, and maybe you're let's say you're a sapiosexual, you're heterosexual, which means you date the opposite sex of you, but you're sapiosexual. That means you're a heterosexual person that still looks for people that you can have those conversations with and really dig deep with them. Or you could be pansexual and be sapiosexual. So if you're pansexual, which is, I'd say technically is my identifier, which is, it's not about gender, it's about the person. So like, I like using that. That's an example of one of the words that people use that people start to get confused of, like, oh, is that sexuality, or is that just like a preference, or X, Y, and Z? Let me digress though. So when I say cisgendered or trans or non-binary, that's under the umbrella conversation of gender. While sexuality is attraction, who you fuck, who you are with, in relations with.
Right.
Okay.
And I think that's where a lot of people start to, they're like, I don't know, I do too much, and I don't know about none of this, and da 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 da. And it's crazy because I think we brought up, we're gonna get into like Caribbean roots, right? And my who I am on a racial level and ancestral, who I'm connected to. One of the most profound things I found when getting more into like queer Black communities was learning about, and again, I can't speak to this as much, I wish I could, but learning about like ancient stories of two-spirited beings, of non-binary or trans people from way back in the day, like Ma'at time, like way back in the roots. And understanding that even though it seems so complex, these identities have existed longer than we thought that they have. Just because they're new to us, or just because we don't understand or maybe confused, it doesn't mean that it's new. It's just new to us, or new to that brain, right? So again, gender versus sexuality. And because I'm cisgendered, there's a privilege in being cisgendered. There's a privilege in me being recognized as what you see me as a woman. I identify as a woman. I am privileged in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a lot of information.
Right. And that's not even everything. Didn't even give you like
I wanted to ask though, like when it comes to that, why make it so complicated? Like it's just like so many layers on top of layers and branches here, and why is it so complicated where it's just like,
I think
man, woman, boom, but you got like all these layers, or it's like spoken, like I'm sitting here like
mine,
yeah, already, and I know you can go deeper. I know you can go deeper than that. So it's just I'm lost and not even hit the layers yet.
You're okay. What you just said reminded me of a very specific moment in my life. So, just full disclosure, also, I was not openly queer until my like early adulthood. Okay. I had questioned it and kind of knew at a young age, and it, that fluctuated throughout my development as a adolescent, right?
Right.
But I remember in my later part of high school, I was in the Gay Straight Alliance, or Gender Sexuality Alliance Club, whatever that was, right? And it was where queer people and straight people came together and did things on campus, whatever. Mind you, I was an ally in this space. So I identified as a heterosexual woman who was an ally to queer people, even though at the end of the day, I knew I was queer as fuck. Right. It was kind of like my little cover, right? And I remember the first day I went, they threw down a packet, and it was this thick packet of all of these different words. So what you were just talking about, like these identifiers get really complicated, and how am I supposed to keep up? And I remember, and this feeling has changed over time, but I remember getting this like relief and being like, oh my God, there is this whole world that can help me find out who I am. Right. And it's not just gay or straight.
Right.
Because that felt hella limiting to me, gay or straight, right? And there's all of these words that can help me figure out who I am. Now, fast forward, that was probably 6 years ago, fast forward to now. Sometimes I'm like, we're getting too complicated, and we're putting too much pressure on identifiers. We're putting too much pressure on labels. And I think that that's a general conversation on labels for all spaces, right? I think we get even in the Black community with certain things, we get so focused on labels and how we identify and what type of Black you are, what type of person you are. And that's where it gets complicated is where do you find the balance of finding out who you are and how labels can support you in your self-discovery, and how do you move away from just, oh, I need to be this, or this just cause.
Right.
I think it should be a challenge to how we associate to labels in general as human beings. And that's something that I wouldn't have been able to say today if I didn't have queer folks teach me to think outside of the box. So on the same point, these people who are using these labels are also the ones that are supporting me the most in challenging and rethinking things.
That makes sense. That makes sense because you have so many layers, so you don't have a choice but to challenge it because you get not to pick one, but you have to go under
them all kind of.
Right. So it makes sense. It makes sense. So it's like one way you can be confused at first, but once you get it, it's like practicing on something or going to the gym and you're an athlete, you're going to get better and better and better and better.
Exactly. And that's why today, like, I used to be like, oh, I'm pansexual. And then there was a moment of time where I'm like, am I a lesbian? I was like, no, I'm not. I'm just this, I'm that. And now, like, I really appreciate queer as an umbrella term because then you don't got to know. If I fuck with you, you'll know. Like, if I'm interested, you'll know. You don't got to know anything. You don't have to know if I fuck with you or not. You'll know if I'm sitting there with you. Like, it's simple as that.
Weird, we don't, like, I don't really hear that term as much. So it's just like, I mean, you heard queer, you see it on shirts and stuff. You'll see around a person with a shirt on.
I honestly thought that queer was like a derogatory.
Me too, like a bad thing.
Negative term.
Historically, yes. So,
and the community uses it so much that it's like, okay,
but it's
you kind of become desensitized now because now it's like everybody says it, and not you guys, but the community says it like amongst each other. But then if somebody else from like the straight side says queer, then it's like just like how Black people feel about people.
That's what I'm saying. The N word, right? Exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely reclaiming. It's definitely, but the crazy part is that right? This happens with Black people too. Generationally, there's a divide. So sometimes, and not always, but if I talk to a LGBTQ person over the age of, I don't know, 40, 50, whatever, they may still have a certain relationship with that term and would rather not use it and feel a type of way with it. And I've had those conversations. And also, like, in reclaiming words that are harmful, like, it is only, in my opinion, only that the person that identifies with that thing has every right to do with whatever, you have every right to do with that word as you please, just as with the N word. I have every right to use it or not. And I can't tell you if y'all could use it or not, because you are also, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think it's offensive for straight people to use the word queer unless they're intentionally trying to use it in a derogatory way.
That makes sense.
Right. It makes sense.
But you're right. We realized when I was in Georgia, we were using the word queer a lot, and I was like, oh, you just got to say gay, because like even for the women, you just got to say gay because that's how it is out here. And I thought that was really interesting.
Right.
Because I'm in the Bay, which is notoriously known for like being very queer and being very like socially like aware. Socially aware in that.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, a lot of people talk about Atlanta, but I think San Francisco got it beat.
But then see, I'd say it's complex. It's very complex. Because then you can get into it, because I think SF is notoriously known for being like gay or queer, but the cis white gay men take control of all of that. And I don't think that those are not, that does not relate to queerness. There's something there too. Queerness is queer folks and people that fall under the queer community, and the term queer historically is, there's a lot of activism behind it. There's a lot of, versus just being gay. There's a lot of history behind being queer. And it usually tends to be more of the like POC activists that are under the queer community, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Right. Okay. That was also a lot of information.
That's what I'm saying. Just like, which is good though. It's good.
Yes, it is. It is.
I can always go back and watch it again.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, when did you know that you were attracted to the same sex? How was that for you?
When did I know?
You kind of briefly spoke on it, but like, Was there?
I don't have a moment. I don't have like that. Like I've had people tell me like I looked at so and so from this show,
right? Like the story or a person that just was like, okay.
But I think that's the complexity of being pansexual, right? Is that I love people, and I think that was confusing too. Was understanding close relationships that are just friendships versus close relationships that become intimate or romantic, right?
Right.
So for me, and just like I have. This term is, I'll break it down. I have platonic romantic friendships. Platonic meaning on a friendship level, it doesn't get sexual. It's all love, but and it's romantic and physical in that, like I hug and kiss my friends' cheeks. I kiss my friends' foreheads. We can cuddle, but we know that at the end of the day, there is no blurred lines. And I think that I've always been that way, but that when it came to exploring my sexuality, I was confused. I was like, oh, I don't know like what to do here or there. But I'm like, who's the first like woman that I was like, oof, I don't know. I really couldn't tell you. I think there's admiration versus like attraction when I was younger. And I will say that, I did start to experiment with other girls at a younger age, definitely during childhood. And some people will be like, well, that's why you're queer. And I don't think that that's why. But I do know that I did have a hard time trusting men.
I was just about to ask that as well. Was there like a certain, because I know, from our growing up together, you did date men at one point. And was there just something that happened or just
when I knew I had done things or made out with or had whatever with girls before I had been with my first guy, and not even like sex, like just like dating and not even dating. Hey, we hung out, and kissing and like getting those feelings or getting like, oh shit, I want him to touch me here.
Right.
And in reflecting on him or that moment, it's about trust for me. It's not about how you identify. I'm going to respect how you identify, but it's not about how you identify. Or I always say when people are asking me and it's like, we're chilling, I'm like, it doesn't matter what's under your pants. If I fuck with you, I'm going to know how to work with it. Like, and I still think to this day, that's who I am. And also it has evolved and I have become less attracted, or not even my attraction to cis men has evolved. It's not the same that it was. Say that again.
I have a question. Do you think straight men have it the worst out of anybody?
In the context of what?
Just overall, just like from the cancel community to dating to
the cancel community. I think no, trans Black women have it the worst. Trans Black women in the context of a lot of things, because they don't even get the same support. Even if you were trying to put it head to head, they don't get the support that Black men could get.
We don't say that because every like women and the queer community, they cancel men all the time in workplaces.
Yes.
So I understand the trans get it as well, but that's a choice that they chose to do it. But a straight man is not a choice. It's just
a straight man can choose to continue to perpetuate harm, though. A choice to be harmful towards others. If they're canceling the man because of something they did or said towards women or queer people.
No, I'm not saying there's something. 70% on a normal basis. Like even dating, like most of the women are queer. They're going left, and then they don't have anyone to date. And then you go in the work community and it's like you say something, and just because they don't really like men, they just like, oh, I'm going to HR on you because you can't flirt anymore. It's no natural thing because they're queer. So it's just like, I don't like them anyway. So don't even say nothing to me. So it's hard. You feel me?
I think so. Then and I keep going to these like broader, larger topics, right? And I think that is more about consent and sexual education at an early age. I think that both all genders, I think we all are lacking a lot of education around consent and sex and exploration with ourselves and others that, we wouldn't be having most of these problems if we start opening these conversations at younger ages, right? When you start, the second you start to get turned on and you get those feelings, like that's when we need to, like,
whether you have sex ed in school, but I haven't seen sex ed in so long.
And even if it is sex ed, it's not. They're not talking about consent.
They're not
talking about queer
identity. They're really just telling you how to get pregnant in sex ed. As far as I can remember, like it was just all about this. If you do this, you're gonna get pregnant. So you know what I mean? That's really all sex ed.
It's either or, right? It's either like be safe, just do this, or it's like don't be safe, you're gonna die. If you
exactly, you're gonna die, you're gonna have a baby, you're gonna get fat, and your friends are gonna leave you. Like it was just,
and it's. I remember they split you up by gender, and they tell you certain things, and I think that we're continuing this cycle of separation, and we actually we're not learning about each other at all. I think that's what it is. There's a lack of taking the time to learn about one another, and here, this is one of the number one white supremacist characteristics is thinking in Black and white. And that is where we in the Black community, as like straight versus queer or whatever, that's where we never we continue to think how the white people think. And we are complex beings. We can think outside of the box. It's not just Black and white. Things are on a spectrum. We can go beyond like yes and no. I think it's a yes and or a, you know what I mean? I just think that there's room for more, and we're limiting ourselves. So that, again, I go into the broader, like how we can deal with this.
Right.
Because when we make it about certain identities, that's when we start to click, you know?
Yeah. And it's good to have this conversation because I mean people get to listen and understand. A lot of people confused, a lot of people looking at it from a closed eye. They get a good message from everybody.
And I think
there's
people
also a lot of people that are trying to figure out that where they stand, that this video can help them to figure it out. You know what I mean? That just
and you had mentioned cancel culture, and I really want to name that, like, I'm currently personally in this process of like moving away from cancel culture because I was really in it. I was part of the pandemic, all I did was talk shit about men. And I was like, even if this is all true,
trust me, that's what I was saying. I'm telling you, women, like you're a woman, so most women cancel men, but you're a woman and queer, so like that's what I'm asking. Is it double time? Was it double
also,
time?
Like, and also like I had every right to have that moment because men were every time I went outside. Men were harassing me every second. Men pull over. Men do this. Men do that.
But we were driving in Atlanta, and some Hispanic men outside their window trying to holler, like, "Leave us alone!"
Y'all look crazy. And that's another thing I talked about this with my partner and other people that I've seen since being back in the city is that I was like, I think it's about culture too, because how men were, aside from that man, but how men were approaching me in Atlanta versus how they were approaching me here or even in New Orleans or wherever I might be, it was very different.
It's different.
I did not usually I'm fearing my life and I'm fearing my body is going like because they don't care. But with Atlanta, it was like, I'm gonna let you know what's up, and then I'm gonna walk away.
And I'm gonna be about my business.
Like, they walk away after they say a compliment here. That's wild to me. I was like, oh my God, I respect you.
Right.
But the straight men I know, like I was saying, they're reaching out to girls in the DMs. They're getting turned down. Mm-hmm. They're trying to talk to girls in the street. They're getting turned down. So it's just like. Yeah. No matter where they turn or what they try to do to get a woman, it's not happening. So some of these dudes go a long time without even having a hug. So it's like crabs in the barrel. They like, they go what? And some of these dudes, they go too far, so they need to be canceled. The ones that go too far need to be canceled.
The ones that go too far do, and also when it's not the too far, when it's really an education opportunity or an opportunity for conversation and understanding, like, how do we get there? Like, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, I currently am in the Tenderloin, which is Skid Row is very like you walk outside, people are shooting up, whatever. There's a lot of men on the street.
I've seen that on YouTube. It's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not opioids. What's the
heroin and what
meth,
else?
and something like that. They're shooting up.
Every single one you're naming, I just saw when I went to the farmer's market.
I
took a morning walk to the farmer's market and saw every single one of those.
Yo, a guy pull up and he give him free syringes and he get the old ones back.
That's harm reduction.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's super big here, and I think that concept can be. That's low-key what we're getting to here. This is like verbal harm reduction, right? How do we, and also I think that's the hard part. Sometimes you got to name it. You got to be like, all right, this is a necessary space for us to talk. And I may say something that offends you, but I need to get it out in order to get to where we got to get to. Right. And I respect that. And I fuck with that. And we, as I know Naya, because we're related from you being with my brother and from creating kids with him and all that jazz. And my brother and I, we got a lot of different opinions on things. And that was definitely challenged this last week in my visiting there. And also before that, I was really proud that we were able to still like not agree on shit, but be able to talk about it and move forward. And also there are men and there are people that I will not give. And it's grace in conversation, not necessarily action. But there are people I won't give the same grace to in conversation because my brother, I grew up with him. There's a safety there. There's a trust there. There's some blood there. And it changes depending on we were challenged in that this was the first time I had a serious partner and they're not a cis man. And I brought them around.
Right.
And that's something I had to deal with, right?
I was so surprised, like the way he conducted himself. I just thought the worst because it's always been the worst, at times.
Well, and when he first started like really digging into his religion, a lot of it was yelling at gay people in Hillcrest in San Diego. A lot of it was, and I remember him telling me that and seeing a video of it and being like, oh my God. And also he is the only one in my family that's like that. So I'm like, whatever. Like there are people where their entire families disown them. So I'm grateful. I am beyond grateful that I have a family that was so down for it. And I think that's something that was kind of one of the questions was like coming out or I don't know. Into that.
Who was the hardest person for you to come out to in your life?
Yeah, I didn't really come out like that.
Right, you were just like, hey, everybody, I'm this.
Okay, now everybody knows.
Hearing my partner, so I figured it's, it has to be something else because I never heard that terminology before for someone to refer to their significant other as their partner, Yeah. So it was never like
partnership is also like, yes, it's a good way to give a title to somebody without a gender.
Right.
So like, this ain't my little boyfriend. This ain't my little girlfriend. This is my partner. We're creating together. Like
building together.
What we're doing together is going to blossom regardless of their gender or sexuality.
Correct.
Yeah. But yeah, that's why I think I had a delayed coming out because my parents thought I was gay. They call me little lesbo. They call me little dyke. They called me this and like jokingly and sweetly, but they kind of like, it was obvious that I was queer, I think. And I was kind of like the first to really fully realize, or not the first to realize it. Like my dad knew that I was queer before I did.
Right.
And my dad loved that and he embraced that. But because they started saying it around middle school, again, child development, here's some knowledge. It is a proven fact that time when you start puberty and middle school, essentially scientifically, like there's something in your body that makes you want to say no to everything. Right. And we make that joke. Like when you're in middle school, you want to rebel. You don't want to listen to your parents, whatever. But it's scientifically proven that like, that's what's happening in your body. You want to say no to everything. Right. And that's what I did. My parents told me I was gay. I was like, nah, I'm going to prove to you I'm not gay. And I'm going to go fuck around. Like, I'm going to go find a guy now.
Right.
So it more was a coming into my trueness than like coming out. I was it was like my second year in college. I had already been with a handful of men. I have been with more men, technically. I've been in more straight relationships than I've been in queer. And I had a lot of different relationships, some really great, some really harmful. And then I just remember being like, hey, yo, I think I'm going to change my Tinder to men and women. And then from there, I was like, oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah. And then I had my like first adult experience with somebody who identified as a lesbian. And that was really interesting. See, it gets layered, me being not a lesbian, dating a lesbian, and how that, and then her friends being like, oh, well, you're not a lesbian, so you're going to leave her for a man anyways. Right. So it happens in all areas, right? This distrust, this not being able to trust people for who they are, be in the moment. But yeah, I'd say my brother was the hardest it wasn't even hard, but it was like, I know for a fact that and I asked, I think it was on a phone call. I was like, so if I ever got married, would you go if it was a woman? And he was like, nah, sorry. And I was like, okay, well, would you go if it was like a trans man? And then I had to explain to him what trans versus cis was. And then he was like, nah, unless it's he was like, unless it's a nigga, unless it's a straight cis black man, I'm not going to your wedding. And I was like, well, good thing I don't want to get married anymore anyway.
Right.
And I also learned that I don't need my brother's validation. And also I could still love my brother and he could still love me.
Correct. Because
and this was just one of those moments where I was really challenged, you know?
Yeah,
and
I know that
you were surprised, right?
Yeah, I was surprised because I just knew you. I don't know. I just figured you like men. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have, and I don't really know I don't have a gaydar, so to say. You know what I mean? When it comes to women, I'm really like.
Yeah, me either. Men, I mean, just because I'm a man, but men I know, but women I can't tell.
Right. I'm like oblivious. You know what I mean? Because a lot of lesbians and bisexual women like me, but I'm just oblivious to it because I'm really nice, you know. So
thinking I guess that's another nice.
Thinking we're being nice to each other, like, you know what I mean? Like we're just laughing at each other. We're just being girls. Like I'm oblivious to it, and there'll be like a girl that likes me, but I don't have this gaydar to know. And you're my sister, so it's not like that. So it was just like, but you know, I support you. Whatever you want to do. If you want to go be with horses tomorrow, then hey, you know what I mean? Like we're not into bestiality, but you know what I mean? I support you no matter what. I know you do the same for me. So it was never like anything. I was just more so worried about your brother, you know, and how it would possibly affect our relationship because he's so controlling. I just didn't want any shit between us because of your brother not being supportive or whatever, but you know he did well. So
exactly, yeah. And at the end of the day, some context, like I've always been the black sheep of my family. Like I've always been othered or the other person. So coming out as queer wasn't like, it wasn't this huge thing. It was like, again, it was kind of expected because I was already so different from my brothers and my family. And that too, like I'm the only girl of my dad. My dad has 3 sons and I'm the youngest and I'm the only girl. So I think that there's like, for my brother, he's like my only sister and like my youngest sister. And I have all these feelings. And I'm also like, yo, like the first 5 years of my life, I didn't realize this, but looking back, I do. We were mostly surrounded by queer people. There was a lot of gay men in our life.
What your brother said to me like a few days ago. He's like,
yeah,
you know,
because my dad was constantly
had a lot of gay people around you guys, men,
because they were in the dance music.
Because they're in that industry. Your dad was a DJ, and your mom clubbed a lot.
Yeah.
So
something my dad just told me recently was like it was the gay clubs that were giving him chances to play his music first. It was the hetero clubs that were like, oh, your shit's too like weird for us, or is this my dad blew up with that support. So I think that like my dad had that respect and context. And my dad also, he grew up in the 80s. He wore women's clothes in the 80s.
He gets his nails painted. I thought your dad was gay for a second.
People think my dad's gay all the time.
There's no way this man's gay. He got 3 kids, you know, but I'm just like, I don't understand why he's painting his nails. But now it's like big that men just it's like a rock star thing.
It's the rock star thing, yeah.
It's a rock star thing.
And and that's part of like the community. I want to get away from like, and I think that's really difficult, especially in the context of Atlanta. But like just moving away from
putting genders on everything, like, oh, boys can't do this and girls can't do this. Like some things I feel like I understand that some things are for men and some things are for women, but then I feel like it shouldn't be so, like, because for a while, you know, Azariah, which is my 4-year-old son, he played with Barbies all the time. You know what I mean? And I was really freaking out about it because I'm like, is my son, you know, like, is there something that I missed? And it's just, he has a sister, so he likes to play with the Barbies. And when I really sat and listened to him play with them, he's calling them his girlfriends. You know, you know what I mean? He's not being
how he's working with them.
Yeah, he just, you know, and a lot of people around me would tell me, like, don't let him play with Barbies. You need to whoop him. And I was like, no, why would I traumatize my son like that? Like, if he's going to be what he's going to be, me whooping him for playing with Barbies is not going to stop him from being what he wants to be. You know what I mean? Like,
and if anything, that'll, regardless of what his sexuality is, that'll confuse it, or not even, let me take that back, not confuse it, but like that trauma, right? That trauma now creates something in that child's brain about like being safe with you. It's not, it's about, can he trust you now, regardless of what goes down, or even like, you know, we talked about this before. Like, if something happens to your kid and they don't tell you because they fear that
they don't tell you for years later, things happen to your kids and they don't speak up because they are afraid to speak up.
And we see that happen in the Black community way
all the time.
Children being harmed and then not finding out till later because they feared that they were going to get whooped or whatever the fear was.
Somebody like was able to convince your child against what you taught them, which is to tell you when they're unsafe, tell you when things that make them uncomfortable happen, you know?
Yeah. And it's taboos are really killing us. I'm like, whatever's taboo, I'm about to make it not taboo. I'm going to talk about it right now. I'm talking about it right now, because the more we make shit taboo, the more it can hurt us, or the more things get confusing or we don't know. So I appreciate you like admitting that, like, that was your process. Like,
yeah. See, my kids was confused because, I mean, it's the flip side to that. Like, my kids was confused because we was watching a TV show, and it was a gay couple, and they was kissing and everything, and my sons looked at me like what is going on? So that's my, like, I understand, you know, it happens, but sometimes, you know, it should be a disclaimer or something to let you know, because I mean, I'm not saying it's not right or wrong, but sometimes when it's forced, that's what I don't like. The force, like you don't like when a guy come up.
Argue that heterosexuality is forced. Then, if you're seeing a woman and a man kiss on TV, I could say the same thing about that. That has been forced down my throat more than queerness has.
That's not that. But we're genetically made to be plus and negative. It's genetically, two women can't have babies, two men can't have babies, a man and a woman can.
Maybe that's all that was supposed to happen. Maybe I was only maybe that was the deal. Maybe I was only supposed to create life with men. And
but that's from someone that understands it differently. But when you're straight, you get it. It's just one zone. But I understand it's more like, I respect everyone. I love everyone.
Yeah.
But the force is the hard part, especially on a little kid. Like, if they got a choice to do it themselves, that's fine. But the force of it, especially on a TV show on ABC.
Right. I get that. Like a kid's show. Like, and I feel like it's more so because it's new. You know what I mean? Like, when I was growing up, I didn't see like, you know, queers on the TV as much. You just didn't. And so now that we're all having kids, they're pushing it more now. And I understand why, but then it's like, damn, like let them be kids, you know, before you're just pushing all these pronouns and, you know, like confusing.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's confusing because they're so young, and like as adults, it's a lot of information to take in. I'm not saying they don't need that knowledge, but give them some time in these little kid shows.
Now, if they get older and want to, whatever, but let them learn themselves. Like you said, you had to learn yourself. Everything had to come to you, and you had to figure it out. Not just you looking at TV like,
oh, okay, that looks like something that's supposed to be what it is, and then it's just like,
well, and
you know.
But the reason, okay, I hear you, and I hear where you're coming from as straight parents, and I see that feeling, and also as an educator and as a person that studies child development and as a person who has taught queer education to children, it's more the adults, it is the children, because we have. So, and for these kids, for your kids, that is very new to them because they do not see it outside. They haven't seen it, right? Your daughter or your child hadn't seen it until that TV show, right? So they were like, the fuck, Dad? Because they hadn't seen it yet. It wasn't a part. And I think that's that argument around normalization or if we're trying to get to a place where like all things are truly accepted, then we wouldn't have to treat it differently. And just as we're trying to get Black representation or POC, people of color representation in media, what if white people were like, oh, we should put a disclaimer if Asian and Black people are going to be in the show?
I mean, we should.
I understand that.
Like, what if he said that? Like, that's crazy.
But to be honest, I had kids for a legacy, not for a lifestyle. So meaning my sons is for a legacy. Them being with a guy can't make my legacy. I can't pass my last name to the last name to the last. It stops. So to be honest, I'm here for a legacy.
To figure out how to provide sperm to an egg and create his own.
Too complicated.
That's too complicated.
Get a woman, have a woman, get married, have a baby, move on. That's simple. Egg this, ovaries that, get a girl, have the baby. That's too much. And that's not my legacy.
But is it, and also in it being your legacy, your son is going to have to make choices for himself, right? And him continuing the legacy, right? You're going to put trust in him to continue on y'all's legacy, right?
I'm going to raise him to do the legacy. Like you said, if we don't know what the world, like you said, if we don't understand what's going on, because he's taught where I taught, like I was taught, my dad, he was an alpha man, and he's not having none of that stuff. So I was taught that way, and he showed me it's different. See, we have a segment called beta and alpha, and most men is beta men. They were raised by women, they act like women, but a lot of men was alpha men. They have a different type of mold and ingredient, and from my dad and granddad, like we've been taught from an alpha gene, and an alpha gene is totally different. And when most women talk about men, they talk about the beta men of the whole thing. So the alpha men, that's who they cancel. But when it comes to me raising my kids, my sons specifically and my daughters, it's I teach them how to love everyone, but live on to the legacy so you can pass it on to your kids, to your kids' kids.
So Belo, if one of your kids were to be a part of the LGBTQ community, how would you feel about that?
It won't happen.
How do you know that it's not going to happen?
This sounds like
that's exactly what Adonis says. It's just not going to happen. But how do you know that it's not going to happen?
Because I'm in my son's life. It will only not happen if I wasn't there to push the mold. See, even though
I don't see that standpoint, because I see men that grow up with the alpha man in their fathers in their life, and they still feel the need to be attracted to the opposite sex.
But they want alpha.
So you're beta if you're a part of the LGBT community.
The man is already a woman if he's beta. So he's already emotionally as a woman if he was a beta man. So if a man is raised by a beta man, he's already a woman. So he's raised by a woman to a woman. An alpha man is not going to have that.
I mean, he may not have it, but that's where you create these sneaky kids that go and do things behind your back that you don't know what they're doing because they can't be themselves or who they feel like they are, because
what kids needs to be themselves.
What do you mean?
That's when you turn 18. When you turn 18, you turn grown to be yourself.
Right.
You're going against my philosophy.
You're grown to be yourself.
You don't have no say, like, you under my roof. I'm your parent. You're not my parent. So you can't tell me what to do. I'm gonna tell you what to do. Like I said, if you get older and do what you said when you're an adult, that's on you. But under my parenting,
they have to do what you want them to do. Right. Which is how we usually raise all of our kids.
I'm a parent.
What I'm saying is, what if, okay, hold on, Evan. What if you raise your sons and daughters to do all that? And they did. And then when they turned 18 and got from up under your house, they strayed away to be a part of the LGBTQ community. Why
would they? See, hypothetical is the same what if, but why would they do that?
I mean, why would they not?
Because
I will admit, I did not grow up under this. Therefore, it is very, when I do see it or hear it, I'm like, that's why when my brother and I get together, I'm like, what?
Right.
What are you doing? Like, but and also like I think the word legacy keeps coming up for me, and that's where my respect will lie, right? Is understanding like you continuing a generation, you like doing this for your ancestors and for the future. That's the shit I'm about. And also like my hypothetical, and I'm really asking you to step outside of this, like, no, it's not going to happen, right? This is a slightly different question. How would you feel, and you wouldn't ever know this in the context of what I'm asking, but like, how would you feel if you knew that your child continued to live the way that you wanted, lead out your legacy, but they were holding and hiding themselves that whole time? Like, what if?
But how would they hide something they don't know?
If they did know, like, if they were like,
that's what I'm saying. I only teach, like you said earlier, kids only what you teach them or what they see.
Queerness doesn't need to be taught.
It's like a spunk. It does, because if you have that ingredient and you're pushing that ingredient to them, how will they know otherwise?
Because the ingredient is already in them.
No, you're not born gay. Gays.
Some people say they are born gay.
If you're not born gay, then you're not born straight. We have to see them as, you have to see them.
You are genetically, you're born straight because you're supposed to be with a woman's supposed to be with a man. You're things that you can do together as a woman and man, you can't do with the opposite sex. I respect it. You can have your choice, but it's just don't mix together.
That's a large assumption.
I'm giving you an example. I'm giving you a fine example. I told Panama to watch this video where this guy, he sent people out to the wild. They were in the jungle. So it was all women. Yeah, all women on one team, all men on the other team, right? The men did a lot better, but the women were struggling. I mean, they after a couple days, they was like, no food, no this, and that. So like, when they got together, it just started flowing. Like the women knew how to do this, the men did that better. It's just a different chemistry, which, yeah, I feel a guy can act like a woman, but he can never be a woman, and vice versa. But I respect it. You can be who you want to be. You're grown. You can go on date who you want to date. But I feel personally that a man can never be a woman, a woman can never be a man. Now, see, I understand feminists, like they call it femme or something, when you yourself and you're dating someone else. But when you start saying trans and then the stud, that's fake to me.
I think this is hard for me to understand, because something I realized in my sexual attraction is like, the more fluid somebody is, the more I'm attracted to them. So the more people lean away from everything you just listed, the more I'm attracted to them. The more there's people move away from these titles and labels, is like the more I feel an attraction, and like I could do that. I could work with somebody and create something and build. And
it's good because
beyond that.
And me, when it get confusing, I run away from it. So I'm more. So that's it. We can have our own lane. Like I'm the opposite. Whatever what I listed, I love, and whatever and I see, I'm like, oh no. So I get.
And also to your point, it's also important to say, like statistically, 1 in 5 kids are born intersex, which means that this like male or female isn't that you. How do you say that when there's folks who are born with both parts, and this like identifying to male or female based off
because when you're born, yes, like sometimes you have two twins. You have a fetus that dies or connected. They have 2 heads together. You have what kind of birth you call it? A defective birth. So you have that where some kids have 5, 6 hands. You have defective births.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kid there that have both body parts, yeah, they can pick and decide. But I mean, they have a defect. Some kids come out slow. Their minds don't be as just like a person, you know, that comes out differently. So yeah,
also,
births are
it's important to name that usually, real quick, usually when the title slow is usually associated to like autism or certain spectrums.
Right. Yeah,
actually, it's the opposite. The brain isn't actually. But what I'm saying is, it's different. It's difference, not deficit. It's not lesser than. It's just a difference. And I feel like 1 in 5 is a pretty large statistic to like to. Maybe this whole like there's a lot of hidden information, and again, black and white thinking and singular, like I don't know, it just seems a little too there's too much going on for us to not like look at it on a spectrum and look at it as like at the end of the day, I know that I'm not going to change my mind and you're not going to change your mind, right?
But this is not for. Yeah, but just not
changing minds. It's just to both educate each other on your beliefs, whatever.
Right.
And that's why I was like, let me stop. Let me move away from that.
Agree to disagree.
Disagree. Yeah. So
and this isn't the first time I've been in this kind of space. I ran a facilitated space for Black youth, and it was called To Be Black and Queer. And it was about that. It was working with a lot of young Black people who thought similarly to you, or even were hella homophobic and not about it at all, or were queer. It was a spectrum of queer or of Black youth. And it was about, let's talk about this other community within our community and how we treat them. And instead of making it, I'm going to convince you, you're going to convince me, it was about like this, understanding. And something we did was we went from statistics and we looked at all things like that and things about queerness and identity and gender and birth that people don't always think about or know. I hear you, but
yeah, I mean, this, you know, you can believe in, you know, I believe in science, I believe in God, I believe in a lot of stuff as well. So it's like, you know, I'm a deep thinker and I am a statistic guy. So that's why, you know, people can have the way they feel, you know what I mean? And they can in like mental illness is like, I'm different, you know what I mean? Like I feel if you're mental ill, it's fixable. You know what I mean? You don't need all these medicines. You can do it naturally. You can do it yourself and you can heal yourself.
We should be diagnosing systems, not people.
There you go. So
like that's what it is.
Right. So my mind is like that. I'm a fixer, and I think things logically. And when it comes to, you know, the queer industry, I mean, like the people community, they're humans. So it's not like they're aliens or, you know, like I'm a Black man, so I understand when people look at me as like right. So I feel the pain.
Y'all know what the fuck I'm trying to say. Discriminated against.
Right. I discriminate. Right. So I feel the pain from an adult standpoint, but when it comes to the kid standpoint, that's the only part that I'm shaking.
Just loses you.
Let them figure out, and that's the only part that with me, because like when you're watching, like you said, you might have a little girl one day, and she's seeing a guy and a girl kissing, and then they're looking like, what's going on? So I get that much, right?
Yeah.
But the shows I'm saying is family shows.
Or the little cartoons you've seen when you can overhear what my kids were watching. They just do weird shit in some of the shows. That's why I like the shows that you put on for them, because they're educational and they're just regular
Yeah.
doing kid stuff.
But let me tell you, even they have a mom and dad and they don't even kiss. But then when they went to this couple house,
it's the over sexuality that they're trying to push.
I think it's also, for me, it's like, I think from like when you say like if I had I want my children to be exposed to all different types of relationships, so they know that they like I don't want my child's relationship to have to look like whatever ones I have, right? And that's what I plan on doing. I plan on being in community with all different types of people, so I could be that in them and their children's life, and they could be that for me. So even though I don't agree with a lot of what my brother does, I mean, we'll see what happens once I have children, but I'm not going to keep my children away from their uncle.
Right.
Depending on if he wants to be a part of their lives or not, we'll see. But because, so I don't know. I have these conversations. I've worked in all age settings. I've worked with ages 0 to 18. And it's the youngest ones that are the easiest to talk to about this type of stuff or anything nuanced, because they have not been conditioned yet. They have not been fed all of these different things. And we have to understand that we all have an ecological model, right? We're us, the individual, and then there are all of these variables that contribute to us. What you were saying about continuing your legacy, you educating your child, the school you put them in, the TV they watch, the political decisions that are made throughout their development. All of those things directly and indirectly apply to that child's development, right? When I work with ages 3 to 5, when I'm in the preschool classroom and they ask me questions about queerness or about identity, they start coming up with ideas that I'm like, they know how to solve what you're saying. You're a fixer. It's the babies that know how to create community and solve this shit and get it going.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody's creators. I mean, but it's just the destiny of what we're creating. Because I feel, to be honest, even if it's a little kid that's that age, I wouldn't even be talking about even grown-ups having been married or anything at that young age. Yeah. So it's certain things that, when they're young, they're naive and they're open to anything. So you can say, hey, go get a gun and do something, and 9 times out of 10 they might go do it because kids are naive like that. You can portray them or move them to do anything, brainwash them, do anything under the sun. That's why when people do have a sex ring, they still little kids because they're so naive to feel like that's a lifestyle. So I don't even tell my kids about marriage or anything now. I'm just conditioning them how to be a woman and be a man within themselves now. And then once they get to an age, then you teach them about the birds and the bees, and it's different steps and levels that you get them there. And that's how a real man should.
Every family is going to have a different approach at that, right? And that's where it starts to get tested with school or TVs or whatever. And also, like, that is not going to be me. I'm going to be very honest. Again, I'm moving away from taboos. And also, like, being mindful of, like, if you say some shit, your child may go up. That's right. Trial and error and learning and X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But I hear you. So you don't even talk about relationships. You wait for certain stages.
If they under 10, is really what we're talking about. You're like 1 to 11, 12. They're almost 13. They're teenagers. So like then I start birds and bees because you don't want them to make mistakes. But like not saying I don't teach them about what can happen and stuff like that. The real things. But it's just like imagine this. Imagine teaching a 5-year-old about drugs. Then it's like, why would he be teaching about drugs?
I mean, it depends. I think it really depends on the level of the child's IQ, because my kids, they are really like, it just runs in the Glad family thing. I don't know. They have high IQs and they can just understand things a lot better than other kids. I try to keep it.
Mine too. Yeah, mine too. I mean, mine too.
I think it just depends.
There's a term in education called scaffolding, right? You may have heard it in another context, and it's where you scaffold up or you scaffold down. If it seems like the person's not being challenged and they're not learning, you scaffold up. So if you realize your child can attain a lot and you trust in your child to hear what you're going to say based off how you say it, you're going to scaffold that shit up. If you see that this child or this person ain't getting it, they're challenged, they're not moving, you scaffold down.
Right.
So it sounds like that's what you could be doing in the context of having these conversations and a lot of it is about trusting the child, trusting the group of children, putting trust and understanding, and being how you may raise your kids. You may not, like, I know how Naya and Adonis raise their kids is not how I'm going to raise mine. And also I respect that, but like, how can you like, okay,
Right.
maybe I can introduce this, or maybe I can like bring this up. And if not, okay, step back. Let's figure out where we need to start from.
Right.
It's important to take risks sometimes with your kids and education, because as much as you want them to be whatever it is you want them to be, you also want them to like have love and trust in community, and know you want to teach your kids how to understand others. That's the best way to survive in this world. That is the only way I have lived in this world, is by my trust and love and understanding of others.
Right.
Regardless of who the fuck I am that day.
What's up, Dia?
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm finally just hopping on here. Excuse me. Had a long day, but we're here. I like the conversation of what's going on. I appreciate what you're saying. Like, you're right. You should. I don't have any kids, but with my history with my parents, I was one of those kids who kind of like should have been scalped up, and I wasn't. So I went out into the world and learned a lot of things from a lot of other people. Yeah, I learned on my own, and I'm lucky, like the people that I did have experiences with, it was always approached with like understanding and things like that. So yeah, I got really lucky. I have a lot of good core friends because of that, but I have a lot of people who taught me a lot of things also. And there's no like love lost or like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's also like just an experience.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. For sure.
And I'd say that's how my kind of growing up was like, all right, like I'm gonna figure it out myself and I'm gonna go find it. And like being lucky enough to have people that do help and support that. And also like, what if you don't have that? So you really want to, you want to be able to be somebody that your child can trust regardless of where you're at with something.
Yeah.
Regardless of where you're uncomfortable. And sometimes is naming it. It's like, yo, this makes me uncomfortable. I think it's important to, if there's feelings with it, to name the feeling with it, because that's what's going to help the child understand. Kids know feelings first. That's what do they do? They show you emotion.
They do that. You hurt their feelings. Yep. That's the number one thing that they say. You hurt my feelings.
Yeah. They're crying, they're smiling, they're throwing, they show
happy, they're sad.
Yeah. 100%.
So you gotta, and how do you show that to them and share that with them? I think that's important regardless of where you stand on something.
I think a lot of parents sometimes, like we all are gonna have our own experiences. What I've noticed is some people, instead of dealing with either their childhood traumas or earlier traumas, they kind of hold on to that, and that's how they teach with their kids based on their own experience, not realizing that, hey, all your children aren't going to be the same. They're all individuals. So you're going to have to approach them individually and teach them differently.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And your experience is your experience. You can give as much of your own life lessons, but that may not apply to your child, or your child may not relate at all.
I agree.
And I agree. Naming that as a cycle, right? It's a cycle of like, and I think of my grandfather, my father, and my brother, who we've been mentioning throughout this talk. And my grandfather was what you were saying. What was the term you used?
Alpha male, for sure. Alpha male.
My grandfather was an alpha male, Haitian. He was a hard. Part of me is like, yeah, like when we learn. I never met him. I was born after
just
he passed.
Hearing stuff about him sounds like he's just a mean, like a nice.
But alpha don't mean mean. You know what I mean?
No. Sorry. I'm not saying
alpha mean. I'm saying when I hear things about.
I see what you're saying.
He definitely, this man,
Mr. Glad. It just seems like he was just a man that just don't play. You know what I mean?
And then my father, he's
like the complete opposite of them.
Yeah, I would say his trauma response, right? Maybe it was to be the opposite. Not as much structure. Do what y'all want. Here's some love. Like, I'm gonna go do me. Y'all are gonna go do you. Like, I support y'all when I can.
Well, like, probably was the grandfather around a lot?
Oh, no. So that's the one thing my dad did learn. The one thing he did learn was to provide for your kids financially and work a lot. So both of them were gone a lot. So
right. So your dad was around your mom more, so that makes sense.
Yes, and then my brother, it's like schizocycle, right? Now my brother is more like my grandfather,
right? Because and he learned that. You're right.
Yeah, but and arguably, my brother was around our two. Our birth mother, I call her birth mother, and the woman that took us in and dated my dad for 10 years, I call her mom, versus my brother calls our birth mother mom. But my brother is technically around more women too, but whatever happens.
But at a certain point, he got a mentor. Like, even though you have a father, like I was telling the ladies on a past podcast, even though a man is an alpha through a man, don't mean it has to be your father or something like that. So like, I have a lot of people,
mentoring,
like my nephew and stuff like that. They call me throughout the times because their dad is at work, he's busy like that. So you can have a mentor, a guy that figure like that. You don't have to, just because you're around women don't mean you can't be an alpha. You just will have a mentor that can show you the way.
Mm. I'm like, this alpha male stuff, I feel the same way y'all felt when I was listing words off earlier.
Like, what is this? Alpha, beta? Yeah.
Beta, I was like, huh? But then I see that and I'm like, it's interesting. And everything's a trauma not everything, but a lot of things can be a trauma response. And also, like, we speak about trauma. I think it's a buzzword now. A lot of things are buzzwords now. Probably why we're here is because certain queer buzzwords or whatever, and it's just about breaking them down and what do they really mean. And I think that's another fault is like, we're in not even generation, we're just in a time where people are using a lot of words wrong or just misunderstanding things. And like, I've gotten caught up in that. And like,
which was the whole purpose of this episode, which was just to understand better
how it works. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm so tired of it. I'm so tired of like the assumptions or the calling people this or that, or I'm just trying to figure out where's the middle ground. Where can we? And even I always have this conversation with my brother. We talk about the revolution, right? Like, let's say the revolution really happens. Let's say tomorrow shit goes down. Like, people getting their guns. Like, it's a race war, riots, whatever. I'm going to partner with my brother, even though we have different visions for the future. Because I know that we work together now, and and then once we get our land, your land's over there, my land's over here, and I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z, and you're gonna go do X, Y, and Z. And I think that's one of the faults of like the not understanding and just continue. We learn from the white man how to separate from ourselves and each other, and we're still doing that, and I'm tired of it.
And right, and that's what I was saying about earlier, because it is the white man that's doing the Disney shows like that. So it's just like, like they're doing things to both sides, playing the fence to everything, putting their foot in everything to make everybody so hateful and so angry. So like, like I said, like, if a black person kill a white person and then it's all on the news, like, we make things more than what it is.
Yeah.
And it just should be so simple.
Yeah. And on that same note, I invite y'all, if y'all are into documentaries, because we were saying that we don't see a lot of representation in before we didn't see representation in TV and media. There's a documentary called Disclosure. It's on Netflix and HBO. And it's about the representation of trans people in movies. Whether you think that it's there or not, they talk about certain tropes and what happens. And there's a certain quote in it that I really appreciate. And it's somebody saying like, it's pretty much a lot of it is them making fun of trans people or villainizing trans people or making them sexual deviants or insert predators. And something that somebody says that I really appreciate, they're like, we really wouldn't care about this as much if there was good or proper representation of us. So, and I know you were just saying like your argument around like representation in media and what you'd rather have for your children. But on that same note, I invite you to just hear their perspectives because I can't speak on that. I'm not a trans person.
Yeah, it is hard because I thought trans were doing good from my perspective because they have Kevin Hart's and all type of celebrities playing women in movies.
Right.
So
but that's the.
But I thought That's like, and they
that also has to do with, okay, why is it so comedic for a Black man, which arguably, how are they seen in society? Masculine, insert here. And it's so comedic that they're in this reversed role. Like, I don't know. There's something to say about, because it's more so Black men dressing up than white men.
But that's the thing I'm saying. It's portrayed that way, and that was the point I was making earlier. Because even though it's a whole thing, why don't you just get the trans just to play the role?
And that's what everybody's saying now. We talk again back to POC too. Like, why don't you just get whatever identity that is to play that role, and you will be a lot more successful with whatever you're doing.
But that's the agenda I was saying, and I think that they're doing to, especially the Black men, to push that at a young age. Like, when they see that it's funny, and then they go in the mirror and put their mom wig on, and then they're running around the house like I'm a deer. But then it's like, bro, no, calm down.
Bro, no.
I'm like, do whatever.
Because he don't really know what he's doing. He's just doing what Martin Lawrence did.
That's the same point as like when you were saying about when your son was playing with Barbies and the assumptions you got. These assumptions are gonna kill us.
But my assumptions came from my peers, the people that were around me, my family saying, don't let him play with this and don't let him play with that. And after a while, I was just like, you know what? And he got out of that stage. He doesn't even really, play with dolls anymore. It was just, and when I sat and listened to him and I heard how he was playing with them, like, oh, this is my girlfriend. This is my other girlfriend. Okay, you're just like your damn daddy. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's not what everybody was making me feel like it was. You know what I mean?
But it goes to what I'm saying too, from a man's standpoint. Like he was not taught well, but he's seen it well. That's what an alpha man is. Alpha man is not all about putting pressure on you. It's about showing you, like, okay, this is what it is. This is how it is. And he see that, and he can be just like his daddy without being told, without being yelled at, screamed at. You don't need to be yelled at and screamed at. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
You don't need to. Me?
Yeah.
I just look at my kids like this, and it's a wrap.
Yeah. Also, on that same note, as we're talking about my nephew specifically, right? And I want to name that, like, right? You just asked him, what if your children were gay, like, and you knew or whatever? Same thing if one of my niece or nephews come out queer, like, I don't know. I mean, we could guess all the things my brother might do or say or whatever, but if it's on the low and they come to me, that's why I'm in the job I'm in. I'm ready to do whatever I need to do for my family. It's unfortunate that people act a certain way when people come out or people show their true colors and who they are. And I'm ready to have my arms open for that if it happens.
Right.
And if not, I'm ready to open my arms anyways.
Regardless, right.
Regardless. I've seen too much. Yeah, I've just seen too much harm and hatred and violence. And I've written so many papers about how me and my brothers went through similar things, came out so differently. And yeah, I want to give what we didn't have all the time, out nurturing and love no matter what.
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, and I mean, don't, like, I always tell people in the queer community, I said, don't feel like it's a pressure, because the Black community is it's pressure anyway. Like, we argue at each other and everything.
About everything.
About everything. So it's just not a queer thing. It's not a straight thing. It's not a Black. We argue if you're light skinned and dark skinned. So
I was literally
we just had this conversation. Where people will accuse light skinned Black people of being colorist.
Or soft,
or feel like they don't have the right to say nigga, or they have some type of privilege because they're lighter skinned than.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, you can be colorist. I know that all communities of color deal with colorism, right? In Asian communities, they have bleach in their face creams.
Yeah.
This shit is layered, right? That's one example of many. Right. Colorism is very much real, but it's assuming that just because you are lighter skinned that you actively are those things, right? It's the assumption. And what you're saying, right, that this goes back to these labels and these identifiers, and we find every reason to fight because of them.
Right. So that's why I tell everybody, you know, in the queer community, it's like the fight is just not y'all fight. We fight over everything. So it's just like
it's also difficult when death gets involved or violence gets involved. And I don't really want to get into the baby or whatever the fuck he is. That like shit like that starts to happen, and that's violent. And that made me think like, yo, are niggas gonna start shooting Lil Nas? Like, are people gonna start wanting to kill him because of what he's doing?
Well, it depends, because when the way he's doing stuff, it's like the way he's doing
it's long overdue.
The way, like, okay, some stuff is disrespectful. Like, it's disrespectful. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're queer. I don't care if you're straight. Like, some stuff he's doing is just like it's a little different. Like, you know what I mean? A little different.
Some stuff he's doing, I would say, might be disrespectful to folks who are religious. To folks who believe in God. Like,
nah, like the hell shoes that he stole from Nike. He's doing too much. Not only
people always argue that black people are doing too much, though. Also,
they do. But like, he's doing too much. The only person I can say that doing too much is Tekashi. He's not black, so like he's doing too much. Lil Nas doing too much. Like, even on the award show, he kissing the dude and got the dude. I'm like, bro, what?
I'm like, for me as a queer, I'm like, fucking finally. And I'm not one to like. It isn't my go-to to be like, I'm gonna throw it in your face, but also like, please, I'm like, finally throw it in their faces, because this is his freedom of expression and he's having his moment. And whether this is,
I think he's being paid
for the next 20 years or not.
I think he's being paid. His mom lives in Decatur, Georgia, and my homie talked to his mom. She said he's never been gay like that, but now that like I think
it's about opening up. I was never gay like this 5 years ago. I was never this type of. My gayness, my queerness evolves every year. Also,
yeah. If you get paid $3 million, your career go skyrocket.
I think like you're so fortunate that you know who you are. 100%. Like you're not only able to tell us, you can embody it, and I can like feel it as I'm talking to you. And I've only been on here for maybe 15 minutes. But I think 90% of the world right now, straight, queer, bi, like anyone, is not being their authentic self. I think that's just the entire world. Like, I don't get me wrong. I'm someone who roots for Meg Thee Stallion, who was like, yeah, go to college, do this, do that. Hands on my knees, shaking ass on my thought shit. Like, nobody's going to want to go to college. Nobody's going to want it. They're going to want to get
I think it's duality also. Huh? I want room for duality. Like, I love it when I see like gay hood niggas. I'm like, oh my God, people are confused right now.
Those are the worst.
There's room for, but I mean, personality wise, what they do, whatever, I don't know. But like image wise,
my thing is, look, I love queers. I just hate the down low. If you're gonna be who you be who you be. See, like that's who me is. You can do what you want to do. Like, okay, do it, but don't hide it and fake it. Don't be my homie and like. That's
you want honesty. You want you to just do trust. Also, what if he acted like all your other homies and also was gay?
That's the point.
What if you met somebody that had similar?
What if that was just him? What if he was just that still man?
But he goes home. But I'm not saying. But what I'm saying is this. What I'm saying is not saying that he can't be there. I'm just saying. If he was there, if he was that, then what I'm saying, the problem, not what if that, like, if he was that, you should be who you should be, like, be you. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think going back to that, where is that welcoming or openness to be authentic? Because I heard you say that and that was hella validating. And also, this is one area of my life. This queerness is this little fucking speck. Right. And I'm currently going through a fucking evolution and I'm relearning who I am. And I had all this, we all had shit happen to us during the pandemic and bullshit, whatever. But I am currently in a like re-identifying myself, period. And like, I kind of got nervous getting on this call for a second because I was like, oh my God, like, what do I believe? And where do I stand on this? And I told myself, I don't need to know. Like, I don't need to have one opinion coming into this space. And that's actually better that I'm not like, okay, this is what you believe about this. And this is,
right.
And like, I threw out that statistic earlier, and I even had a moment of like, oh shit, 1,000 other statistics. Why aren't they coming up right now? And it's like, you don't have to be defensive. This isn't an argument. You don't have to prove everything you know in this moment. And I think that's where the authenticity is. And that's what you were feeling, is like me having that moment with myself. And I'm still learning how to do that. And that's where I'm blessed, is that I can actively name that as I'm talking to y'all, while a lot of people don't have that access to their.
That is 100% key, because for me, it's like, I do agree with what you're saying, Belo, as far as like, if you are who you are, like, just come as you are. Like, that's how I interpret a lot of people, come as you are. And that means as well, if you don't know something, that's okay, because like, you're going to have time to figure it out. And that is still authenticity to the fullest. And I think that everyone does expect people to like have it figured out or fit in a mold, or, you know what I'm saying? And like, I just think that that's the best part of life, is that you're able to go through experiences that are able to kind of help shape you. And you're able to say, hey, this is what I like. This is what I don't like. You know, that is.
I'm learning from it, right? Like,
yeah,
exactly. And that's what I was naming earlier. We were talking about like folks who cancel men or shit on men. And I've had a fluctuating process of my relationship with men and how I understand them and how I relate to them. And I really do. I love brotherhood, and I want to have that with more, especially Black. I'm like, other men, whatever, but especially Black men, I want to be able to have that with them. And it's definitely going to be a long journey, even if I was straight. And I know that about myself.
I will be honest. So where I grew up is predominantly white. Probably didn't get exposed to urban culture till I was about 14, 15. My parents are Jamaican, so I'm first generation American.
Got you. Okay.
They actually don't see color. You're just Jamaican. Like, my grandmother's
about
red hair.
You're not like the Black folks. They don't see you as Black either. They're like, you're Jamaican.
You're Jamaican, yeah. Like, so I was so confused. And even when I moved to Atlanta about 2 years ago, I had a culture shock. Like, I went through a whole thing. And for me, it's not so much color. It's like the aggression down in Atlanta. For me, I don't do well with aggression, just because of my past. I have a little bit of trauma with domestic abuse. So I actually don't deal well with aggression. And like Belo and Panama know, I had a situation this morning where somebody approached me for music. I'm in the industry. And instead of them just being like, hey, I want to have a business meeting with you, they were like, I want to go, let's go on a date. I said, what does that have to do with, you know what I mean? And that was a Black man. And for me, I've never been approached like that with a white man. Most of the time when it's about business, it's about business. I was just like, that's something I like battle with regularly. And coming to Atlanta, that's what I wanted, to be exposed to the urban community, to put money back to gain money. I was longing for that. So it's been a rough journey. I'm straight. It's been a rough journey, but I'm still trying to connect. Like,
I'm here.
So I get it. I hear you on that loud and clear.
And again, I've been with a lot of men. I have been with a lot of cis men, some great, some not great, right? And again, I think it's important for me and my sexuality to know it has nothing to do with my relationship with men or not. Like, if the more I'm with not men, it's not like I talk shit and I'll be like, yep, I ain't never going to do that again. Or I say X, Y, and Z. And also like I can argue that sometimes men can be pushing us away. I don't think it's all men, but it's some men. But at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's about me fulfilling my pleasure and happiness. And that's on that.
Right. That's pretty dope.
Real talk. I love that.
I'm glad you guys weren't affected by the power outage that Decatur just had, because that shit was crazy. And the power just went out everywhere in this neighborhood, and then it just came back on.
Yeah, I was about to say that bounced back quick, because like you came back.
Yeah, I did. That you just said whoop, whoop.
I was looking down like,
but I don't know if that's gonna happen again. So I'm a slide.
Cobb. I'm in Cobb earlier, and it happened out there.
I'm sorry.
I was in Cobb County earlier, and it happened out there.
Okay.
So it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate you. Thank you for getting me on.
Thank you so much.
I can't wait.
It was fun.
Episode. We thank you so much for coming on, P, for hooking this up. For real. Like, we definitely, I'm sure we'll have you back. At least from what I've seen, I would love to have you back. 100%.
Thank you. Yes, and I'd love if y'all want other. I think if y'all want other perspectives and other folks, I know a couple of folks that would be that would watch this and would want to come on and stuff. So let me know.
Yeah, I think next time what we should do is have a phone call before, and we can kind of, because everything was just so random and like
There's so many ideas. Yeah,
right. We have so many going on. So I think next time if we can talk one day, even if you bring someone else in, and we can kind of go over it all together and make it mesh more better. I mean, it didn't mesh, but sometimes we were just like I was shocked you said something, you were shocked I said something. We just like,
hey, that's real. That's
like, I can't believe that nigga just said that shit.
Right.
Yep. It's all good. I appreciate it. We're learning.
I appreciate you so much, Evin, for taking, I know you're a busy girl and you got on there for me. I appreciate that. I love you, and I hope to see you on my, platform again.
Oh, yes, of course. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much.
Bye.